On March 24th, IBM Copy Services Manager G8 its 6.15 release. In this video, I'm going to show you a number of the key features that we introduced in release. I hope you see that a lot of them are actually customer-driven features. We've listened to a lot of feedback and made a lot of improvements in the product to help out our customers. The first one I want to talk about is the GUI enhancements to support advanced LDAP configuration. So I'm going to go to the GUI. I'm logged in. And where you set up LDAP is under Settings, Administration. In the top part is where you see your LDAP server. If there is no LDAP server defined, there would be a link here that you would click and bring up our wizard, but it's the same wizard, so I already have one set up. I'm going to click up Modify, and this is what it looks like. So some of the changes we made is that we used to have a drop-down where you select Active Directory or LDAP. When you selected one or the other, the inputs down below would change as well. Well, what we found is that whether you select Active Directory or LDAP, inputs are basically the same, just they're usually reworded a little different, but they're basically the same concepts. So in order to avoid confusion, we now have you can select between LDAP or Active Directory, and down below it stays the same. So you would add your Active Directory server, your LDAP server or your Active Directory server. You bind DN, base DN, bind password, as well as you can enable SSL and load a certificate. So before we didn't have the ability to enable SSL in Active Directory. Now you can do that and load the certificate as well. Now the key feature I want to introduce you to now is the Advanced tab. So as you probably know, LDAP can be quite difficult to set up. It's very robust. A lot of customers can have different environments and different setups. And so while we've tried to make this wizard as easy to use as possible, it builds your LDAP configuration for you. Underneath, it creates an XML file for WebSphere to use to do the communication. Not all cases will it work. So what we found is, a customer would have problems, and support would have to have them take that XML file, upload it to the support team. The support team would then have to modify it, send it back, and the customer would have to apply it. Well, we try to cut out that extra steps, and we add this Advanced tab. So what the Advanced tab does is actually shows you the XML that was created and is defined on the hardware, on this file system, and so we can have the customer modify it directly as they go. So if there's something in, say, the base DN that needs to be changed or the bind DN, a customer can easily add extra comma or remove values so that they can test it and then save it. So what you see is that the XML now, customer can modify it, manage it, and hopefully get issues resolved a lot faster using that Advanced tab. Next feature I want to talk about is user-defined group names for sessions, along with the filtering support for that. So we have a lot of customers that have maybe hundreds of sessions. Well, the session overview panel is designed to give you a list of the sessions in a table format so you can see them at a high level and their states, statuses, etc. Well, if you have hundreds of sessions, it becomes difficult to scroll through those, hard to look at them, hard to find the session you want to manage. So what we did was added this group name column. So then now you can actually multi-select multiple sessions. Under Session Actions, choose Set User-Defined Group Name, and then you'll see a drop-down. So now you can choose either existing group name or type your own. I'll show you typing your own. So say these are all admin groups. I'm going to say OK, and now they're showing as admin. If I would then want to add an additional group, I'll show you that. So if I select a single one, I can view, modify, set user-defined group name. I'm going to choose admin again, say OK, and there it is, admin on that new session as well. Now the filter in the top, it's been there before, handles the session names, etc., but now we've enhanced it to handle the group name as well. So if I start typing admin, you'll see that now only the admin group name sessions show up. And so now they can look at those, manage them separately from the other sessions, making it a lot easier to manage when you have a large number of sessions out there. Next feature I want to talk about is the import of a certificate through the GUI for our IBM ZOS host connections. So when you want to installed CSM on, say, an HMC or a distributed server, you have the ability to enable hyperswap, but in order to do that, you have to create a host connection to ZOS. So what we have is under Stores Host Connections, you can go through the wizard, but what you had to do in the past is you have to create the certificate to have an SSL type connection on the ZOS side, but you had to take that certificate and apply it to the CSM server. Well, when you're running CSM on HMC, you do not have access to the file system, so you cannot easily load that certificate. You have to call a PFE or someone to actually load it for you. And so that was difficult, thus making it hard to actually enable hyperswap and harden freeze on a HMC. But with this new feature, if you add the host connection, you can now see that there's an import ZOS connection certificate button. So you would add your IP address, your port, username, password, just like you normally did before, but now you can actually click on import host connection certificate, choose your host connection, your certificate, and then it will upload it to the server for you. So after that, you should have that connection, thus hitting the next bullet, which is allowing you to set up hyperswap and harden freeze configurations from an HMC. So hopefully that now enables those customers that have installed on the HMC to easily manage hyperswap. Next feature is the Synchronize CSM auth server certificates. So how do I explain this one? So this is for customers that are want to set up LDAP on their DS8000s. So you could set up in this DS8000 setup, you can point it to a CSM server where that CSM server is set up with LDAP. That way, when someone logs in the DS8000, it can call CSM and authenticate that user using an LDAP server. When you do that setup, you actually have to upload a certificate for the CSM server so that the DS8000 can talk securely to the CSM server. But the problem came in where you can only use one certificate when you do that setup, and multiple CSM servers, when on installation, build a unique certificate. So what we added in was an easier way to synchronize the certificates across the different servers. So at the bottom of the settings, advanced tools, is a synchronize button. You click on that, you can type in the IP address, port, username, and password, and it will send the CSM auth certificate to that other server, thus synchronizing them, so that now, after you've done that, you can click on the Export Trust Store Remote Connections button, export the certificate for one of the CSM servers, and then upload that to the DS8000. And then the DS8000 should be able to talk to all the CSM servers that you've synchronized so that you have redundancy. So the next feature I want to talk about is the new CLI support for modifying CSM server properties. So there are properties into the CSM server that this CSM will read and look at for different various things. For the most part, customers don't set them, but under support circumstances, you might get the support requesting you set a property, or you might need to do something like the no copy property feature that I'll talk about in the next bullet. And so when you're running CSM on the HMC, you do not have access to the file system, and so it became difficult for customers to actually modify those properties, and thus we added this new feature. What we added was a new CLI command called change system. The change system has, it takes in the file, which is the file or the property that you want to modify. P is the actual property you want to modify in that file, and V is the value that you want to modify. So if you look at the -F, we allow changes to 4 different files right now. One is the ARM server, another one is the Bootstrap, ESS client, and ZOS client. Now, I'm not going to go into these in detail, nor does our documentation, because again, this is more of an advanced feature. So you either have to know what you're modifying or have support tell you what you need to modify, and then that's how you would use this particular feature. I will give you an example. Here I am in my CLI. I am going to show you a no copy. Here's the no copy. It's going to say, are you? So this is a no copy for session AKGM on the H1 and H2 roll pair. Ask me to ensure and say yes, and there it goes. It got set. I'll just show you that real quick. Here's our server.properties file. Scroll down, AKGM H1 H2 got set to true. So the idea, hopefully, is now for CSM running the HMC, it should be easier to modify those particular properties and those different settings. Next feature I want to talk about is a new warning message, a new warning prompt, secondary prompt when you have that no copy property I just set on. So no copy property, it's very dangerous. When you set no copy, CSM will do an establish, and it will set the no copy bit on the establish, which indicates that the user says the primary and secondary are exactly the same. We added this feature back in the first release of CSM because there are customers that had these migration type scenarios where they knew that they drained all the I/O and that the volumes were the same, and they wanted to use a no copy. The problem is, if they forgot to set it, then they are at risk because the next establish might still do no copy. And they wanted a secondary prompt to make sure that they were warned in case that was actually still set. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going into that AKGM session that you saw me set the no copy property for. If I click start, it's going to give me my normal prompt. It says, hey, you're about to override the secondary. I'm going to say yes, and then boom, you get a secondary prompt saying, hey, wait a minute, the no copy option is set. Are you sure you want to do this, and continue on? So if you say yes, it'll establish a no copy. If you don't want to, you click no. Go change that property back, and then you should be able to do the start again without having the no copy established. All right, the last feature I want to talk about is the fact that we have now disabled LDAP by default on CSM ZOS installations. What this is about is that for ZOS customers who installed CSM on ZOS, in the past we always set LDAP as enabled by default. Well, what they found is, most CSM ZOS customers use RACF authentication. They don't use LDAP, and so they'd have either the CSM auth server running, which takes up MITs, and they don't like it, so they shut it down. But the problem is, if you shut that CSM auth server down, when you go into the add user group panels, you get a warning that says we cannot talk to the LDAP server. The customers didn't like that warning. They knew they weren't using LDAP. Ask us, why are you airing out on it? So what we've done is, by default, when you install CSM, LDAP will be disabled on ZOS installations, and thus you will no longer need to run CSM auth scripts to start up the CSM auth server, and you will not see that warning prompt when you add users or groups. If you do want to do LDAP, though, in the CSM install scripts for ZOS, you can turn LDAP back on so that when it installs it, it will have LDAP support, but by default, we will no longer have that. So that's all my list of key features. With that, I hope you see that we've been getting a lot of customer feedback and trying to put that back into the project as quickly as possible. We appreciate all your feedback, and as usual, please open an RFE, request for enhancement, if there are additional features you want in the product, and we will do our best to get that in as soon as possible. Thank you for your time.